Hi, so in this video we're going to look at bind. Bind is often discussed alongside the call and apply methods, but it works slightly differently. When we use the bind method, we're creating a new function, but the value of this is set to whatever is passed in when we call the method. So let's start by looking at a basic example. We'll start by creating an object literal called student1. And we'll set a property name to the value Abby. We'll also set a property score to the value 80. Next, we'll create a function declaration, and we'll call this student score. Inside the function body, we'll return a template literal. This template literal will interpolate in the name and the score. Next, we create a variable called result. Inside this, we'll say student score .bind and pass in student1. Lastly, in the console log, we'll call the result variable. When bind is called, a new function is created and stored inside of the variable result. This is stored with the context for this. It's only when we invoke this later, inside of the console log, that this function actually runs. So to clarify, unlike with call and apply, the bind method does not execute immediately. It simply returns a new function with the value of this set to what we pass into the parameters. So how do we pass parameters to bind? We can expand upon our prior example by looking at how we can pass additional parameters to bind. If our student score function had a parameter, then when we call bind, we can pass the argument for this in at the same time. We'll add a parameter called subject to the student score function. In the template literal, we'll add this in there. Now when we call bind, we'll add a string for art. When we run this, our string has now been updated to include the subject. We could equally achieve the same result by passing the art argument when we call result. Let's give this a go. One caveat to note here is that additional arguments will be ignored. So if we add art to the bind method call, and then maths to the result call, and then run the code, we can see we get art printed out, and because maths is essentially an additional argument, it gets ignored. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more content.